Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm going to be featuring a vehicle which I can't believe. I don't think I've ever had on the channel. It's the Pershing. This is so bizarre because back in the day, and we're talking about 8-9 years ago now, I truly loved this tank. It was my first tier 8 vehicle that I played that was well-rounded enough to realize that you could develop your plays in every single area on a tank and then be able to use them to try and match up against your opponent's weaknesses. It was the well-rounded nature of the Pershing that I felt really good about playing back in the day. The Pershing was the first tank, it sounds silly now, that I managed to get like 1,000 average experience in over 100 games. And when you're a bit of a noob back in 2011 and 2012 in World of Tanks, that felt like a real awesome experience. The Pershing, as I mentioned, with its well-rounded nature, was something that I always felt like I had a chance with. Doesn't matter really what you went up against, as long as you kind of like dug in, you had the vision to be able to outspot maybe some of the heavies, you had the mobility to be able to outflank the tank destroyers, and you still had a nice, decent amount of gun depression to work a ridgeline against maybe a tank that didn't. The Pershing is one of those tanks that I think a holistic player will do very well in. And it's something that I can also highlight in World of Tanks. And that is that lots of people fail to consider that the game is pretty simple. And it's about making sure that you match your tank's strengths, or in the Pershing's case, lack of weaknesses, against your opponent's weaknesses. And in this case, it's that I can spot on a ridgeline, I can use the 400 base meters view range that this vehicle has and try and keep my opponents at a decent distance and just play like a medium forward scout on Prokarovka to be able to try and get that vision out for my team. So the Pershing, the reason why this title of this video is most likely going to be, I used to love this tank, is because these days I was going on Tomato GG to check out the latest win ratios of this vehicle in the last 30 days. And it has 45% average win ratio. And I don't think I'm propping that up at all because I barely play this tank. Usually it only comes out when I'm doing a tech tree showcase on the M48A5, which was last week on the channel, 8 days ago now. I was playing up towards the M48A5 pattern as I do every Sunday. Well, not every Sunday towards the M48A5 pattern, but up a tech tree, right? And I played my one game of maybe every 6 months or every year that I play the Pershing. It makes me realize that the reason why I probably don't play this tank now is that I can probably name 5 tanks off the top of my head that are just better than this in pretty much every single way. Why would you not want to play a Lancer? You have 20% more DPM and you have higher alpha damage and you've still kind of got the gun depression to be able to handle the situation. Why wouldn't you want to play something like a Borask if you wanted to be able to have an autoloader? Or you could even play an Italian kind of version of this tank and then you've got an auto reloader and higher DPM as well. The Pershing statistics, when they used to be so decent and well-rounded back in the day, these days just don't look competitive compared to the other tanks. It's really bizarre to me that Wargaming don't put more time in trying to boost tech tree tanks up to a point where they're the ones that like this, that clearly need a bit of a buff, to up to a point where they're kind of competing again with premium vehicles, or at least a little bit closer than the huge disparity that there constantly is. What, in turn, you have to do when you play a vehicle like this is, as I've mentioned on the channel over the last few weeks, is massively lower your expectations about what you possibly can do in the battle and be happy when situations like this develop and the game starts to go pretty well. So we've managed to do 600 damage here and 4,400 spotting. I would argue that when we look at the bar at the top of the screen, everything that has been damaged has been part of my vision or purely my 3 shots that we've managed to penetrate so far this game. It's a bit of a unique situation here. I don't think I've ever quite seen an example where so many people go up on the hill while you've still got a couple of snipers in the center, which is just absolutely wonderful for me. And then you have so few tanks that are actually playing down the west. This is not a situation that develops frequently on Prokarovka. If you're wondering how to dominate on Prokarovka here, you basically just need a couple of snipers in the middle. You need to have 1 or 2 tanks doing what you see me and the Boras doing up on the hill. And then you can easily, with arguably a little bit of artillery support, manage to at least hold the opponents back here, or even manage to get some decent damage into them. And when they're weakened substantially, and whoa, gotta stop for a minute to appreciate that somebody just hit an AE phase 1 for 1,600 damage. I don't even know what that was. Maybe that was something like the ISU 152 clapping from the top of the hill. But once you've managed to weaken your opponents, then you're going to be able to make the inevitable push. This vehicle, just watching this replay now and talking about all these things, is so bittersweet and sad. Now, I don't expect that Wargaming can try and keep 600 different vehicles in the game perfectly balanced and competitive against each other. But do you not think it's very sad when such a classic tank like the Pershing, such a well-rounded beast, kind of one of those pillars of what World of Tanks used to be, has just fallen into such a nothingness, a void, that even somebody like me that has been playing this game for so long has not featured it on YouTube, and also somebody who loved this tank so much back in the day now only brings it out when there's a Tech Tree showcase going on. It's a tough one. You know, it's one thing as well that I wanted to feature this video today, because it's so easy to get into the loop of just showing autoloaders, showing premium tanks, showing tier 10 vehicles bouncing around, when I realized that I don't give enough coverage. And it's something that I've been trying to work on vehicles like this, and trying to put definitely not competitive tier 8 tanks in tier 8 or even tier 9 matchups such as this, and showing how you can still use them effectively through knowledge of positions. So the equipment that I've been using on the Pershing has been real simple. I think I'm using gun rammer, vents, and I'm using coated optics. Now this vehicle's gun handling, it's kind of good enough to drop the vertical stabilizers. For me, as soon as a tank starts to get below 0.15 or 0.1 dispersion when moving, and I feel that there's another piece of equipment that will allow me to be more successful in the majority of the situations, I'll think about dropping them. Luckily, the Pershing does have good gun handling. Right on the cusp, though, of where I would argue that you probably need vertical stabilizers, we can start to do that. I think possibly you could drop the gun rammer on this vehicle, but that would also lead you into situations where your DPM is now an absolute disgrace, because this vehicle has 1,700 to begin with. It doesn't have the penetration at 190, and it doesn't have the alpha damage at 240 really to be able to make the firepower work. The Pershing, I feel its strengths, believe it or not right now, is that it does have decent view range for a tier 8 medium. To try and put yourself into those kind of support situations like this one, and it's something that I've been doing a lot more in my medium tanks recently. While light tanks are probably less the least competitive I think they've ever been in World of Tanks right now, apart from maybe a couple like the EBR or the T100LT or maybe even the Manticore, I feel that medium tanks are starting to have the opportunity to pick up the lack of light tanks or even the lack of artillery, because medium tanks can put themselves in these cheeky situations where they're exposing their turrets. They've got the hit points to be able to take a couple of shells, and importantly, they, even at tier 8, such as on the Pershing, have enough view range to be able to pump it up to become very proficient scouts. And we're up to 6,800 spotting, and now we're going to start to get some free damage in against the Scorpion as well. We'll be able to finish them off, not quite. Alright, can I risk these last 700 hit points to be able to progress this situation, or should I just continue to sit on top of the hill? Well, it looks like the Char Future 4 on the enemy team has now fully unloaded, having vanquished the ISU 152 on my team. Looks like they've been spotted out now, and they're going to go in the dip. I presume that they're going to be reloading for possibly the next 20 seconds or so, and so I've got to try and shoot them 3 or possibly 4 times if I don't high roll to be able to get them down. Unless, of course, I manage to give them a bit of a ram. But unfortunately for me, I don't quite manage to make the clean ram that I wanted. Nevertheless, 320 damage. That was 1.5 shots pretty much worth of damage there against the Char, and it means that I'm only going to have to shoot them a couple of times, and will they reload? Okay, pressure shot, pressure shot, pressure shot. We managed to connect it between the French autoloading medium tanks' reloads, shutting them down, and adding to our whopping 8,000 spotting total to now 2,500. And come on, it would have been such a fitting moment for the end of this game if possibly one of the least competitive medium tanks had shut down the Borask, aka one of the most competitive medium tanks in the game. And gosh, yeah, every time I look at this tank, I do feel a little bit sad in a way, but I definitely didn't feel sad from this game. This went about as well as you could possibly dream for a tier 8 medium tank to go, which shows that while this is definitely a bit of a flash of passion here in the Pershing, maybe the last little bit that this tank has left in the tank, it's still so sad to see a vehicle that I was so fond of nearly 10 years ago now, just gathering dust inside my garage, replaced with new and more interesting toys. Unsurprisingly, an ace tanker here for the Pershing for the 1,847 base experience that we're able to achieve. Yeah, it's not a regular kind of game for the Pershing, and we get a patrol duty medal for that 8,000 assistance that we were able to achieve, and we also make a healthy amount of profit with or without a premium account. So all in all, the Pershing, do I think it's the kind of tank that you can go waltz onto the battlefield and absolutely dominate in? No, there's a reason why pretty much the majority of all the premium tanks are on top in tier 8 matchmaking, and all of the regular vehicles are sitting down here in win ratio hell, having as low as 44.5% average win ratio, like in the T69. Luckily, the Pershing is a touch higher at 45.73, but really when it comes to playing through this tank, currently it's damage limitation. There's just absolutely no reason why this vehicle's DPM, alpha damage, penetration, accuracy should be as bad as it is, combined with fairly lackluster mobility for a medium tank these days, and armor that would probably be a lot more efficient at tier 7, as is on the Eagle, the tier 7 premium tank. Nevertheless, at least this one time, it was nice to take that trip down memory lane and not be disappointed, even if it was incredibly lucky. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments what vehicles or a vehicle that you absolutely, utterly used to love, but it just doesn't really feel that special anymore. And why do you think that is? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.